And welcome back, everyone, to Lipscomb's Day of Giving. It's been a wonderful afternoon of laughs and learning and making new friends, which are some new friends of mine here, Dick and Marianne Peugeot. You may recognize the name from the Peugeot Center for Developing Communities and Engineering program here at Lipscomb, and what great work it's doing. I guess I'll start, Dick, by asking you, how did the decision to fund this center come about?
Well, it was a bit circuitous, but yet very logical. I was on the board, and at the time I was chairman of Buildings and Grounds, and we'd kind of done a survey of the condition of existing buildings, and we decided we needed a new science building. We were going to build a big science building on Belmont. One end of it was going to be for engineering, the other end was going to be for the biological sciences. So Marianne and I were tapped to do the fundraising for the engineering part of it. So that we did. So we put our money in a paper bag. I think it wound up under somebody's desk. But at any rate, what happened was 2008 came along. I don't know what you remember about 2008, but it was not a very good time to be raising money. So we thought, you know what? Okay, we've got some lead gifts, some challenge gifts, but we're not going to be able to raise the rest of the money to build this building. So the money kind of languished for a while. And so the idea came up with the help of the dean of engineering and one of the development guys said, what would you think about maybe instead of brick and mortar, doing something that's involved with people? What about building a center that has to do with using engineering talent to better the lives of people? And as you know, as Christians, Christ, through his many examples and through his actions, was to take care of people. He said that, your first challenge is to love God, but your second is to treat your fellow man as yourself. So we saw this as an opportunity to put those words to work and maybe be a little bit of salt and light.
And I know by training you're an engineer, right?
Yes, I am. I'm a University of Tennessee. I don't think that's a bad word around here. Electrical engineer. So, and Marianne's two brothers are electrical engineers. So the concept of being around engineers was not something that was totally off the wall.
So where is the center organized and where is it located, Marianne?
Well, it's located in the Fields Engineering Building. We have our own, it's a small suite, but we're growing and it will grow with the whole concept. And we're fast outgrowing our limitations.
That's a good problem to have.
Yes. So we're delighted to see where it's going, and I think it's just taken on a life of its own. So it is growing by leaps and bounds, and we've got a lot of good people. Steve Sherman is the director, and Daniela Baugh is the assistant director. And it was interesting when Daniela was here, she went on several mission trips. And she told us whenever she was hired to be one of the directors, she said, this was my goal. This is what I wanted to do. And she is certainly making her mark.
Did you always think of engineering as being a form of ministry?
Not really, but I'll have to say this. Lipscomb had its roots when I lived in Atlanta in helping me to understand that any ability or talent you have can basically be a ministry. So our minister at the time was Archie Crenshaw, who was a Lipscomb graduate, and Joe Glenn, also a Lipscomb graduate. And in the Church of Christ, we don't have any big central organization that can go out and do missions. So it's up to each church or each university or each group of people, to do their own. So we were really big on medical missions. We saw that there was a need, to minister to those that are underserved. And so actually, our first ministry was in Liberia. We sent Dr. Drennan and his wife there for about 3 years. And so then we started looking at, okay, how can we grow this? And one of the things we found out was that it's difficult for young doctors who are very excited about doing ministry to leave a practice. You can't just join a practice and then say, well, I'll be gone for 2 or 3 years. So what we did was something that I think was pretty innovative at the time. we created an HMO. And so we had a way for young graduates that are interested, in going to the mission field to work in a professional setting. They can go to the mission field, they can come back and rejoin the HMO. So that really got me to thinking about, okay, how are the different ways that you can do ministry? It doesn't have to be a doctor. It has to be something that meets people's needs.
So Marianne, describe some of those things, some of those projects that you've seen come to fruition.
Well, one of the first ones, in fact, the first one, engineering mission trip that Dick went on was to Honduras. And what they did was put together was that a water project, or was that doing the radio repeater?
Well, the water project was actually before I was there.
Okay.
The radio repeater, extension of my ham radio day,
Sure.
was the next project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you're in Honduras, you have the main clinic, and then you've got another clinic in another valley, another one, another one, another one, another one. The only way that this farthest one could get word back to the main clinic that, like, I need some snake venom stuff, was to hope that the person in the next one could relay it to the next one, could relay it to the next one. So they
Pony Express
Pony
style?
Express, literally. And so they found one of the highest mountains. They procured the site. They put up this radio repeater that was done with like marine band radios. And so that way they could reach the farthest. They didn't have to depend on the next one. So, I mean, literally lives have been saved by that. Another thing that's happened in Malawi, for example, they went over there, they put in solar panels on the top of a hospital. And it was interesting because, like, our group was there one week, and then another group from nursing was there the next week. And the guy who was operating was able to operate at 10 o'clock at night for the first time because they had
Power.
Power that they could depend on.
Wow.
And they've also put in solar panels to help kids to be able to use the computers that they'd been given, that they know, whenever the computers were given, they didn't think about the fact that dependable electricity was needed in order to power them. So there's just story after story after story. One thing that happened last year was that Garney Construction went with a group of our engineers and did a water project. And instead of the women now having to go to the top of the hill to bring down water, now they've got water that they can turn on the spigot. And I think that that obviously changed the lives of the people in the village, but I think it had an effect on the students, but especially the people from Garney Construction who do big water projects, to actually see people delighted to have water that they can get to. So, I mean, it's a ministry that touches everybody, whether it's the students or anybody else.
And one of the things we've got to guard against is the idea that we know more what they need than they know what they need. So we've got all these ideas about what would be appropriate technology. Here we are in a very advanced civilization and all kinds of good stuff that, hey, well, this is what they need, So we'll send a bunch of computers and scanners and things like that down there. They didn't bother to see what the electrical grid was like and whether the power was clean. They couldn't use it. So the other thing we did in Honduras that was kind of a disaster, we thought, we're going to build a composting toilet. And the idea behind the composting toilet is that you take the waste from the toilet and you compost it, and voila, you got fertilizer. But guess what? They didn't buy into that project because they didn't think they needed it. They had other ways of doing composting. So guess what? It fell into disuse. So that was a big red flag. Don't force something down somebody's throat if they don't want it. It has to be something they want rather than something we're trying to push upon them. So we had to change the way that we chose our projects.
I would think so. So certainly some new technologies have enabled
Yes.
you to provide things that you never thought would be able to be made, like 3D printing, I'm thinking about.
Well, the 3D printing really came in handy a couple of years ago. COVID, 2020, we had like 6 or 8 projects in line. Guess what? Nobody's going anywhere. So our guys had the idea of making face masks. Because as you remember, you couldn't find them.
Right.
So they started making face masks. And we didn't sell them. We gave them away. I mean, they would get phone calls from like a hospital in New York saying, we heard that you might have some face masks. Can we have some? And they were all sent to them at no cost, but except that we knew that we were taking care of the first responders.
Wonderful.
And that was important. One of the other things, we've also had to think about the fact that we didn't send anybody out. So what could we do here? So we found out that there were some micro houses over off of Green Street that Otter Tree Church had put together. And so you think about somebody living in a house that's
Not as big as this area. Yeah.
Not nearly this big. And so they went over there and they put solar panels on the top so that they could have a fan or heat, or most importantly, to communicate, they had a way to charge their cell phones. So that was a way that we could serve people here within driving distance and be able to just really help somebody. So,
Wow. Did I read somewhere, Dick, about auto parts or Toyota parts? That sounded like an interesting story.
Ask.
Oh, I'm going to ask.
we didn't do that, but this was.
I'll tell you about that.
This
Okay.
is the story.
There's a concept about the circle of the adjacent possible. Now, what that circle is, it's a circle that contains all of the technologies and all the capabilities that a given country possesses. Obviously, that circle is very large in a Western country or in America, but in a country that's underserved, like Honduras, Guatemala, other countries, that's a very small circle. And so the lesson here is that if you go too far outside the circle of the adjacent possible with technology, you're going to get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a project that we sponsored, but it's one that we know about. And I think it very well illustrates the principle that we're talking about. So there's a group of doctors went on a short-term mission trip, and they visited a hospital that had a neonatal clinic, and they were just astounded at the death rate of these young babies. And so they got to investigating why that might be, and they said, where are your incubators? We don't have incubators, So, light went off. They go back home, they raise funds, they buy 5 high-tech incubators, send them down to the hospital. Hospital puts the incubators to work. The infant death rate drops dramatically. A couple of years later, another group of doctors goes to that same hospital. They notice that the incubators are not being used, and the death rate of these young babies is back to where it used to be. So what's the trouble? Well, the incubators broke, and we're not able to fix them. So they didn't take into account the sustainability issue. So at any rate, the observation was made, well, y'all got a lot of sophisticated vehicles down here. You've got Toyota Land Cruisers, that can go across creeks and rivers, and you seem to be able to take care of those okay. So, the idea was born, well, what if we just make incubators out of parts from Toyotas? So anyway, they actually gave a university, and I don't know if it was MIT or some other university, the challenge. So they used the headlights for the heaters under the baby's crib, and they used the seatbelt buzzer for everything. So the bottom line is that they now had an incubator that would pass the test of sustainability. So that is an example of why you have to think about the ability to maintain, to sustain the technology that you send down there. don't go too far outside that circle or you're in big trouble.
The adjacent possible. I love that. I mean,
Yes.
it really is something to consider before you undertake a lot of things.
Absolutely. It
Well, you know,
really
if you
is.
think about it too, you can't, if you're down in the jungle or out in the middle of nowhere, you can't run to Home Depot for another part.
Right.
So you have to think about what you can get easily and what will work. So,
I know you told me that you have a lot of interaction with students. Talk a little bit about that.
you know, the joys of working with these students has just been amazing. I mean, we have friends, you know, that started out, you know, as students and they're still our friends. I mean, it's wonderful. We always try and have them in our house after a mission trip. It's like Dick's interested in what the project was. I'm probably more interested in what did you do and what did you think
see?
and
Yeah.
what did you see and how did you feel about that person that you really couldn't talk to, but you had to communicate with. And so we always have them in our house after a mission trip just to talk and let them know that, you know, we find our joy in being around them and we love to encourage them. We see so much growth in the kids because when they go on these mission trips, I mean, probably some of them have never done anything like this. In fact, I'm sure they haven't done anything like this. But this gives them a chance to really see what talents God has given them.
Right.
And what what they need to do as far as their, you know, while they're on a trip, and they learn so much. And we've just seen growth, and we like to keep up with them. We just maintain the relationship, and it's just given us joy beyond belief.
What's on your dream list, Dick?
You know, I've pondered that question a whole lot. And again, I go back to the fact that, you know, what we need to be about is things that help people to have a better life, you know, whether it be education, whether it be medicine, whether it be infrastructure, which is mainly what engineering does. It's to put the infrastructure in place that they need. Hard for us to say exactly what that dream project might be. It really sort of has to come from a demonstrated need. What is it that they need? What is it that we can provide? How do we match these two up?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if we can come up with a project that, call it a dream project if you want to, we'll find a way to make it happen.
And just devil's advocate, some people will say there are so many needs now with our own infrastructure crumbling and aging in America. Do you see perhaps a project stateside?
We do projects stateside for a very practical reason. Some of our students don't have visas that allow them to travel to these countries. Some of them just can't afford a $2,000 cost, you know, for airfare and subsistence and that kind of thing. But, you know, if you just look at the opportunities that are available here in the U.S., there can usually be a way found to provide water, to provide infrastructure for people. If they're in the backwoods of Tennessee or Kentucky or wherever, you know, they don't have that chance in these third world countries. I mean, they're so disorganized in so many ways. Some of their biggest problems are corruption and crime and things like that, you know, infrastructure is pretty far down on the list. So they really would depend on somebody like us that understands what water, sanitation, what those things can mean in their daily lives.
You guys have traveled a lot for fun. Have you actually gone on mission trips and gotten your hands dirty? And
No, but that's coming. He has. He has.
you have more time now, though, because you recently retired from.
Oh, no, I'm not retired.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Dick. No, I haven't, but you know, I guess what I see my ability is to encourage. And, you know, if I can make some money and help somebody else do something, I'll do it. And I'm getting older, so I don't necessarily.
No, you're not. No.
Oh, no. But anyway, I feel I've got a different role at this point in my life where I can help mentor somebody. I can make the money and let them go, and I can encourage them in whatever they want to do. I mean, one of the things about the center is that these kids have grown so much. I mean, they grow on the trips because they learn teamwork. They learn hard work. They learn that I may have this talent, you've got this one, but it's equally important. They learn cultural differences because they're dealing with people they can't necessarily talk to, or people who are definitely, you go to Malawi, you go to Ghana, you go to Honduras or Guatemala, they're not like your next door neighbor. So you learn so much about culture. Mm-hmm. You learn more about yourself. I mean, you're not sitting here in the United States with all the noise and either encouragement or discouragement or wondering who you are and where you're going. I mean, that's what we read the blogs that the kids send back and just say, you have no idea how important this has been, that this is important to me and I can find ways that I can help other people. That is what's making a difference in my life. And that's what they're learning when they're young. They're not having to wait until they've been out. They're learning that. They're learning their chance. And this generation loves to make a difference in life. Mm-hmm. We're giving them the chance to make that difference.
So to amplify what Marianne said, it's not only those that we serve that are benefited. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we wonder where the greatest benefit is. Mm-hmm. Is it those of us that go on the mission trip that see how blessed we are with what we have, how we learn? Because a lot of times on these mission trips, it's a very instructional, informative thing because professors go, maybe our dean goes on many of these trips. There are engineering professors that go. So when it comes time for these young guys and gals to interview for a job, a lot of times they're at the head of the line. What's the main job of an engineer? It's problem solving. Mm-hmm. What's the main issue that you have to deal with when you're in the backwoods of Honduras? No Home Depot, no Lowe's. It's problem solving, making a workaround, figuring out how to do something that's not easily accomplished. So I think the students enormously benefit. And as a matter of fact, Lipscomb Engineering is something of an anomaly. There aren't other colleges that are doing this. And we have people from Vanderbilt, from Middle Tennessee State, from other colleges, UT, that want to come with us, Mm-hmm. And to us,
have
that's
you guys
very
done
gratifying.
Have you done that collaboration?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we sure have. Maybe not to the extent that we would like to. Part of it, I think, believe it or not, actually, these trips are in demand. Sometimes we don't have enough capacity to take everybody that we want to take. And a lot of kids tell us that the reason they came to Lipscomb Engineering for the mission trip, it's because of the excitement and they just like to do things to help other people.
Can they go right off the bat, or is it upperclassmen only, or do you have to be a certain distance into your study?
They can go off the bat because there's an advantage in having freshmen and sophomore that kind of know the ropes. If you wait until they're all seniors and they graduate, then you don't have any continuity with the other young people. So yeah, we have a blend of people. So that's a very positive aspect of what we do.
You go, obviously you can't go before you're a freshman, but once you're a freshman, you can go. And there may not be much that you know how to do, but you can sure absorb a lot and learn what to do. And you learn the communication. There's so much about teamwork and everything that you learn that it doesn't really matter. So.
Right. And in the field, hands-on, I mean, that's a sort of learning, I think, that just doesn't go away.
Yes.
If you've actually created it.
Yes.
Okay, so here we are today talking about giving, and here's your chance to make a great pitch to people that might consider giving specifically to the Peugeot Center.
Well, I would say it's the best investment in students and young talent and really just in life because they're going to make a difference. And giving to the Peugeot Center and then all the things that it's going to do will just bring out the best. And the Lipscomb engineers are phenomenal young people. And And I will say it's the best return on investment that you can get, and that comes from a CPA.
I was going to say that comes from a woman who knows her numbers.
Yes.
And when you look at those giving opportunities, it might be a little bit hard to find Peugeot Center because it's actually a subset of engineering.
Okay.
So if you'll go to engineering, and then there are several options beneath the engineering choice, you'll find that the Peugeot Center is one of those.
Okay. And if you're comfortable, tell me about why you changed the pronunciation of your name or when you did. Because it wasn't always Peugeot, which is so international.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a dumb reason, I guess, in a way, because why should I care what my friends call me, you know? But I grew up in East Tennessee, and my grandfather was a first generation American from the eastern, Frenchman from the eastern part of France. Somehow, when they came over to America, they changed their pronunciation from Peugeot to Puget. Well, there's a zillion ways that you can misspell Puget. People think of Puget Sound out in the state of Washington. That's probably the number one wrong way to spell it, you know. So anyway, that was just a constant battle that I fought. So at any rate, after I graduated from UT, I worked at Oak Ridge for a couple, 3 years, and then I went to Atlanta, and the Peugeot automobile was being sold there at that time. And people would say, Dick, why do you mispronounce your name? I said, what do you mean? Well, you say Puget. It's not Puget, it's Peugeot. And I thought, well, I guess I better learn how to say that. So I did change the pronunciation, which was fine until I went back to East Tennessee. And so if I went maybe to church with my mother or someplace, she would introduce me, said, hi, I'm Elizabeth Puget, and this is my son, Richard Peugeot. So, you know, I got people got the impression I was being a bit uppity, but anybody that knows me, I'm anything but uppity.
Of course. And it's such a memorable name. You're not kin to the car Peugeots, are you?
Well, you know, I've done a lot of research, and some say yes, some say no. We're certainly in that extreme far eastern reach of France, right near the Swiss border, which is where the Peugeot family is from. So there's a very good possibility that that's the case, but I was not raised saying that you're kin to them. And what I always tell people, I say, look, I've heard of them. They haven't heard of me. They don't send money. So I'd say probably not.
But you're both native Tennesseans. You're Murray County?
I'm Murray County and love it. And I've been in Middle Tennessee my whole life, and just moved from Hampshire to Nashville. Graduated from college, and I've been here ever since. So.
And we're glad you are.
Thank you.
So great to have you today back on campus. And I want to remind our viewers that there's a really easy way to give. You see that QR code, talk about technology right there on the screen. Point your phone at it. It'll take you right to the link to give to the Peugeot Center or any fund that you really feel connected to here at Lipscomb, because, you know, like we say, every dollar can make a difference between someone perhaps pursuing education here and not being able to come.
And I'd like to point out that the Peugeot Center is entirely self-supporting.
Ooh.
Lipscomb doesn't provide any funding for the work of the Peugeot Center, even though they benefit from it by additional student enrollment. But they do give us in-kind support, which would be the space in the engineering building. The engineering professors are very willing to cooperate, even go on mission trips, promotion, just like what we're doing today. So we have no bad feelings about that at all. So we have a very vigorous fundraising effort. Our mutual friend David Bass really carries the torch on a lot of that. And so we have a lot of people that are very invested in serving those who are underserved.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because great ideas sometimes just have to be funded by the people who believe in them, at least to give it the start that it needs to be self-sufficient down the line.
That's right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Coming up next, Dr. Chelsea Harris from nursing is going to share a children's book she wrote, and then an encore of Dr. McQueen's gathering message you heard back on January 11th. Stay with us. Lipscomb's Day of Giving on 2/22/2022 is still to come.